Hey everybody, it's Tony. Recently I was asked to add the Airtable integration to Leica.io, and I thought it'd be a good opportunity to record myself as I add it. And I'll just kind of talk out loud and talk about how and why I'm doing things the way I am. And if you don't like to watch videos, if you go to our docs and you go to the developers page, there's sections on how to add apps, how to add actions, your own connections depending on the connection type, and triggers. But this is really useful if you're self-hosting and you're trying to build like internal tools, or if you're trying to add integrations that the whole community can benefit from. That'd be great too. So let's close out of this. So usually I start by getting the Airtable or the apps API like references page, and it looks like they have a really good one. And then I also have to make an account on that platform. So here I just created, I don't use Airtable, but I created an account, and I'm going to create a personal access token. They also have OAuth, but OAuth does have a few more steps. You have to set up like a redirect URL and get like client IDs and secrets and stuff. It's a lot easier just to do the API key route. So I'm going to create a token, and I'm going to call this just demo token, and we'll add some scopes. Usually we just do the reads and then writes for common actions that we think people will use, and if we're not sure, then we just add a little bit more, because if we don't add enough, especially for OAuth, then we'll have to add like a whole new OAuth method, and it's just confusing. Anyways, I just added these scopes. I'm going to hit create, and now I get this token. I'm not going to touch the token right now. We'll come back to that once I'm ready to try my connection. So let's go to the code. So in the code, you will find let me go over here. I'm like super zoomed in, so it's hard to see what's happening. So in the packages, there is an apps directory, and then inside of the source lib, there are all these folders for all the different apps we support. We don't have a CLI yet. We're working on that, but I usually just copy this template folder, and then I paste it, and then I rename it to whatever I'm building. So Airtable. Let's go find it. Perfect. And we're going to rename this to airtable.app, and we're going to rename the exported value to Airtable, and then we're going to change the ID to Airtable, and we're going to call this Airtable. And the Airtable description, I usually just Google one, so let's go to Airtable. What is Airtable? Okay, it's a cloud-based project management tool. So I'm just gonna copy this guy right here. It looks pretty good. And then I already uploaded an image to our where we host our images, but you just put the URL to the logo, and that's it for this. Now we have to set up a connection, a way to integrate. So I'm going to go to this connections folder, and I'm going to do Airtable dot, and since this is an API key, I'm going to call it API key.ts. It's not required, but it's really nice when you're like searching API key. You know, you can see all the different, and just kind of like find one and copy it, like API key. Let's find this one, copy, paste over here. I'll call this Airtable API key, Airtable connection _connection _ then an ID, and then usually I just keep these all the same for all the API keys. Save. So now we just have to add that Airtable API key in the app, the Airtable app, as a connection in the connections array. And now we have to add some sort of action. So we're just going to do a really simple one. We're going to do the list bases action. This is just important because I think most of these, like create records, needs a base ID. A lot of things need a base ID. So we should start first with a way to get all the bases, right? So let's create a file called listbases.action.ts. We're going to export const list bases equals create action. And these functions come from the Like.io toolkit. So you'll see we have all these different like helpers that come from the toolkit to create different types of input fields, create different types of triggers, and then of course like this create action function. It's really helpful because it's typed and it tells you if you're missing something. So first we need an ID, and just like the connection, it starts with the app ID and then underscore, and this is an action, so we do underscore action underscore, and then we do list bases, which is just the name of the action. And then it needs a name, so we're going to call it list bases. Then we're going to do description and just lists all bases. And then we need an input config. An input config is it renders the form in the UI. And then we need an AI schema, which is what is given to the AI agent so that it knows what inputs are required if they weren't filled out. So this uses Zod, and we'll leave this empty as well for now. And then we need a run function, and we'll fill that out later. And then we need a mock run function, and we'll also fill this out in a second. Okay, so we'll come back to filling this out, but let's add it to the app for now. So we're going to do list bases. We're going to save that file. And now at the bottom of this lib directory, you'll see a index.ts file. And here we want to export our Airtable app. So I'm going to do Airtable, just like that, save. Where is this coming from? Weird. I'll look at that later, but it's just a TS config thing. Okay, so let's restart our server, and then we're gonna pull over the UI. Okay, server's still rebuilding. Okay, now if I reload, Airtable is here. And what does that mean? It means we'll have Airtable. There'll be a way to add an API key to Airtable. So you just call this like my Airtable, and then you put in your API key here, which in our case we generated. It's right here. And I'm going to paste it in there. And then I can assign this connection to a project or not. I'm just going to save, create. And perfect. So now if I go to the connections page, we have an Airtable connection. Okay, now if we go to workflow, I'm going to call this Airtable demo. We'll see Airtable and list bases is now in action. However, if we click on list bases, it lets us pick from the Airtable connection, the one that we just created, but there's nothing else in the field. And if we run it, it's going to return an empty object. See, nothing's happening. It's not returning any. It's just returning this. This is nothing. Okay, so we need to obviously define these functions. So the way we're going to do that is, let's pull this over. Select this for now. Save that. Let's pull up the docs. So it says we need to hit this endpoint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some properties that are passed into the run function. One is HTTP, one is workspace ID, one is connection. And let's just try that for now. So we're going to do, we're going to grab the API key from the connection. And then we're going to do a const response equals await http dot request. And this request takes a few, I'm sorry, it's so zoomed in that everything's just jumping around everywhere. It needs a method. So we're going to do a get, and then it needs the URL, which in this case will be this guy. I think I copied it. Nope. And then I need workspace IDs for tracking stuff. We're not really using it yet, but I'm just future proofing. And then any data we're passing, which we're not because it's a get, any headers and params. If we look at the docs here, for the personal access token, you need to pass it. Oh, it doesn't tell us how to pass. Oh, yeah, it does. So you need to pass it in as a header, as authorization bearer, and then the token. So we're going to do headers authorization, then we're going to do bearer, and then we're going to put the API key in right there. And let's just try this out for now. So we'll return response.data. And this function, if it fails, it'll throw an error, but the whole system's already set up to catch the error and display it in the UI. So we don't have to catch anything here. You could check if the data is like what you're expecting. And sometimes we do have to do that if the API doesn't throw a 400 or 401. Sometimes they throw a 200 and then put an error in the body, which is really annoying. But for most cases, they do throw the correct error. So we'll save. Okay, so we're running. So now let's open this guy back up. Let's refresh to pull the updated. Oh, I forgot to add the input config. Dang, I'm dumb. Wait, except we don't need any inputs for this one. So if I just put Airtable and I run real data, say I have no bases. So if I pull up my Airtable count, so I just created it, it should be giving me this, right? Or is it, since this is like mock data, it's not showing me real data, right? How did I get to that API key stuff? Not this, the builder hub. Okay, data record bases read. This token, oh, I need to add bases so that I can get them. Gotcha. Okay, let's save that. Okay, so now let's try again. If I hit save and test, now I got some bases. Okay, perfect. And now that's it. Cool. Let's see if there's any inputs I can put in to show you. There's the offset, which kind of seems dumb. We could add a, no, that's it. That's basically it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this object, and then we're going to return it when we hit mock run. Okay, and this is important because sometimes people don't want to actually hit the API. In this case, it's not creating anything, so usually you just use run. But the mock run's nice for some cases. So if I do mock run now, actually it's probably still rebuilding. Okay, mock, we'll get, what? Oh, I have to restart the server. Okay, this one's this basically is kind of like a simple, it's such a simple example because there aren't really any like inputs. So let's find one where we're creating something. So create a base. This needs tables, it needs a lot of things. Let's not do this one for the demo. create comment, fields, create fields. I'm guessing create table and add to table are probably the most popular ones. It's like update table. So in this case, we'll need the base ID, which we have, and then we need a table ID or name. Okay, perfect. So what I'm going to do for this is, since we need the base ID and table ID, we need to add this action really quick. And I'll show you why. So I'm going to just kind of copy this, and I'm going to do list list tables, and we're going to paste, and I'm going to rename to list tables, and I'm going to name list tables, list all tables in a base, and the run is going to be different. So let's find the list tables. I could have sworn you could. Is it list base schema? Oh, I think list base schema. Oh yeah, it's this guy. Okay. Maybe I should rename this to get base schema then, so people aren't confused. Get base schema. Just going to copy their description. Returns the schema of the tables in the specified base. Okay, and this is going to be, we'll need the base ID, so we're going to do meta bases. We'll need a base ID here, and then we'll need tables like that. Perfect. And the mock run is going to be this guy. Oh my gosh, that's a lot of tables. We'll just grab the first one. So I'm gonna format this guy. Okay. All right, that'll be a mock run. And okay, great. Okay, so we need a base ID. So the way we'll get a base ID is we need to add a input field where it's a dynamic input field that will load the base IDs that the user can select from. Okay, so first I'm going to actually add the AI schema. So we'll do base ID, and this is a string, and we'll describe what it is. Right, and this will be given to the AI. Probably not necessary since this already has base ID, but that's fine. Okay, now in the input config, we need to create a dynamic select input field. What we need is a ID, and this needs to match this ID. And label will be base ID, and the description will be that, and then the select options will be dynamic. Okay, so that's it. The rest of them aren't really necessary. They're just like more for custom stuff. So we're going to do the dynamic values, and we're going to do async, and it already knows what I do here. Okay, perfect. And we're going to do the same call we did in this list bases action. So I'm going to grab this guy, just like this, and we need to get the API key. Perfect. And then we need to return it. Like this, which I'm not sure if that's how bases, and then it's an object of ID name, bases, ID name, just in case there aren't any, we'll do that, and this. Okay, and then we could add a type for this. The type is this, but we don't need to. Perfect. So now let's see if this works. Okay, I'm getting an error over here. Okay. Oh yeah. So now that we have the base ID, sorry, I should have full screened this forever ago. Now that we have the base ID right here, it's not going to show up like this. It's going to be in the config value, and we can pull it out like this. And now, if we restart this, it should show up. Okay, so let's open this guy up, and let's oh, I forgot. We have to add it to the app. So we're going to do get base schema. Okay, now that it's added, let's go over here and reload the page. So we have list bases, and now we have an Airtable get base schema. And we select our table, and now it's dynamically going to load all our bases. So then the user just has to click this, or they could add the ID manually, which is useful for passing data from another step to this step, right? Okay, perfect. So this will get the base schema. So now if we do real data, it loaded some data, which is great. Now let's see if our AI agent can get the base schema. I'm going to copy this because the AI agent won't be able to get this unless we give him a way to get it. So I'm going to do Airtable demo, and let's give it the tool to get base schema. So I'm not going to give it a way to get any of my base schemas. So it's going to totally have to guess, because AI agents don't have the ability to do this drop down. So like if I say get my base schema, it asks for the ID. So if I give it the ID, now it can put the ID in, and then it'll get me the data. I covered a lot, so I don't want to do too much. But if we look at what I changed, let's start this. We added an Airtable app. So create app, Airtable, this is some basic stuff. This is where we add the connection type and then the actions we want. And then we added the API key connection type. So create API key connection. And it's just the Airtable connection API key. And then we added our two actions, list bases, which is a very basic one. And then we added this mock run. And then same thing for list tables. We now use the get dynamic select input field and the run. Okay, so I just remembered something, and I think it's actually really important. Let's cover it. We are going to this shared folder, and we're going to add a Airtable shared.ts. So this is really important because this list tables action, which I need to rename actually. I'll do that after. This list tables action uses this base ID input type, but this thing, the base ID is used in like in all of these, like update multiple records. You need a base ID, you need a table ID. So even the table ID we need to pull out. So the way we do this is we put these in the shared folder. So I do shared equals, and then I do fields, and then I'm gonna grab the this whole field right here, this whole guy. I'm just gonna pull out, and I'm gonna put it right here. And I'm going to call it dynamic base ID. And we're going to import. Perfect. And here we're going to do shared. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. We're going to do shared fields dynamic base ID. So now it'll be really easy to reuse this in every action. As we add like 10 more actions, right, they're all going to be using this. So instead of rewriting the code, we put it in the shared fields. And if there's any like commonly shared functions or stuff, we just put them in the shared object. And it's not like necessary, but it just helps everything stay cleaner, especially as multiple people work on the same integration. Okay, that's all I wanted to cover. I'm going to rename this really quick before I forget. So I'm going to call it list or get base schema to action. And I'm going to remove this. And this is updated. Okay, perfect. And I'll look at this before I commit it, but I hope this helps you if you're trying to add in any more integrations. Thanks.